All right. Hi, everyone. A very warm welcome to our webinar, The Potential of AI in Resource Management. My name is Nora, and I'm very excited to be your lead webinar host today. As a new work and transformation consultant, I'm passionate about unleashing the potential of organizations and people by creating more adaptive, more soulful, and joyful ways of working. My mission is to inspire new ways of thinking, working, and being, and I'm thrilled to guide you through today's discussion on AI and resource management. And before we kick off, we usually do a round of check-in questions. Today, we're going to run it slightly differently because we're tapping into the topic of AI, which is a very new topic. We're also wanting to experiment in this very webinar today. So instead of a check-in question, we have prepared a short poll and invite you to respond to 2 questions. So Arena, feel free to fire it away. Our 2 questions should be coming up for you right now. And please feel free to share your response there. And I'll give it about maybe 20, 30 seconds, then we'll close and see where the state of AI is in our audience at the moment. All right. Also, dear panel, feel free to submit your answer. Perfect. All right, Irina, I would say let's end the poll, see the results. Where are we at when it comes to AI and using AI? There we go. Let's see. I can't see the results. Maybe, Irina, if you could share it in the chat, and then we can, there we go. Just took a little while. That's okay. So the first question was, if you could implement AI to solve any resource management challenges, what would you use it for? And 4 out of 6 votes, so about 66%, went for forecasting, 1 vote for resource allocation, and 1 for reporting. The second question was around which AI tools have you explored so far? And here you were able to select multiple ones. And we've got a lot of people using chatbots like ChatGPT already. We've got a few people experimenting with content creation and transcription meeting assistants, and 1 experimenting with scheduling and other AI productivity tools. Okay, nice. Thank you so much for sharing. It's always interesting to see what your relationship to the topic is. So now that we are a little bit warmed up, let's dive into our webinar. This webinar is part of Run's webinar series called LEAP, Igniting the Future of Resource Management. And through this webinar series, our goal is to reinvent the traditional approach to resource management and unpack fresh and inspiring perspectives for the resource management community on how this future could look like. The webinar is brought to you by Run. Run is a resource management software solving the very challenge of matching work to be done and finding the best suited people for the job. For your information, we'll soon kick into our conversation and we'll dedicate the last 15 minutes for questions and answers. So as you're listening to our conversation, as we're exploring this topic of AI and resource management, feel free to capture any questions that might pop up in the Q&A section of Zoom webinar. It would be lovely to hear your questions. So next up, I would love to introduce you to our wonderful panel. We've got James McPhee, Diana Minet, and Sam Minet. We're excited to have James McPhee, staff engineer at Run, with us today. James brings over 15 years of experience building scalable systems. He's very passionate about new technology and integrating AI while balancing ethical considerations. And he excels at translating complex technology into practical insights for resource managers. James, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the webinar.
Thank you, Nora. Wonderful to be here.
Awesome. Next, we welcome Diana Minet, co-founder and CEO of Astronaut, an AI-powered strategy and decision support company. Diana combines over a decade of leadership with hands-on experience as a former resource manager. She's dedicated to using AI to help businesses optimize performance and make better decisions. Diana, excited to have you here.
Thanks so much. It's going to be a really interesting chat, I think. Can't wait to get into it.
Nice. Awesome. And last but not least, rounding out our panel is Sam Minet, CTO of Frankie and Astronaut, a tech leader with deep expertise in AI and business applications. Known for his clear, actionable insights, Sam helps teams and startups leverage AI for smarter decision-making and streamlined operations. Sam, a very warm welcome to our panel. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So without further ado, let's kick off. And to kick us off, I have prepared a little question to get us kind of started with the topic. And I'm really curious to hear from the three of you, what excites you most about the potential of AI in today's world and in resource management? And James, maybe you can kick us off.
I'd love to. So the thing that I think certainly excites me the most is the AI is taking care of a lot of the busy work that we find ourselves doing. I think there's a lot of fear around AI taking jobs, and some of that might be warranted. But the thing I'm much more excited about, and the thing I think is more likely to happen, is these AI sort of augmenting our jobs. And in the world of resource management, I think that idea still comes to play as well, where we're looking at how can AI augment all the decisions and all the information that a resource manager might be looking at to help them make better decisions. So really, when I think about AI and what I look forward to the most, it's around using these to help us make better decisions and to make us be better at the human power part of our jobs.
Beautifully said. Thank you. And how about you, Sam? What are you most excited about when it comes to AI and the potential for our world and resource management?
Yeah, so I think big picture, AI really helps bring to full fruition the promise of information technology and making us be able to do more things more quickly. The last few decades, since about the 70s, productivity growth tailed off compared to the century prior. And I think AI is one of the most exciting technologies for turning that trend around. As James said, because it can get rid of the busy work, it can shift human focus onto things that are more interesting, more creative, and more important, and sort of start decoupling human effort from the need to survive. In resource management in particular, I think there's some really interesting opportunities about identifying who is the best person to take on a particular project, as well as more numerical models for things like forecasting.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm already getting excited about AI listening to you. So Diana, I'm curious to hear from you. What excites you?
I'm excited for the future state, really. So we're going through that really interesting phase of learning all about what it might be able to do for us. But it's a little bit, I think, like when mobile phones took off. Like we were using them quite differently than how we use them now. And we were all using those original apps that were like the beer drinking app and the ringtones. And we were very excited about that change. But fundamentally, what happened after some time is that it actually changed the way we live, the way we work, the way we do anything with technology. So I'm really looking forward to that future because I can see this being a step change away from how we used to think about, even like if you compare it to phones, being tied to those things, being in one place. So that's what I'm really looking forward to, seeing what happens in the next few years.
Amazing. Thanks to all three of you for kicking us off. Now, I'm really curious to dive into some case studies. So this is an unfolding future. We're pretty much at the beginning. From what I can see, there's not a whole lot of AI in the space of resource management, but it's just starting. And they're the first companies and first use cases evolving at the moment. So let's have a look at those. What are some companies and industries leading the way in AI-powered resource management? And what key takeaways can we learn from their experience? James, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, I think your point there around the AI and resource management specifically has really only just started. If you do just a cursory web search and you go and have a look at what companies are providing particular AI, sort of like on their marketing website, here's resource management, here's AI, there's a small number of them. But when you do look at what they're providing, the abilities that they're providing are abilities that you see across all sorts of software. So there's forecasting, which you can see in anything with numerical data. There's suggestions on where you might place a resource on a particular project, and like that sort of that generative aspect. And so even if you look at AI from resource management and see there's not a huge amount happening like specifically in that space, if you think about your role, whether it's resource manager or any other role in an organization, a lot of the aspects of your job, there are tooling that exists within the AI space to help you. We could think of communication, which maybe you ask ChatGPT with some help with what you're doing. There are also tools from Google that can help you import a lot of data and get some questions out of it without a lot of prior knowledge. And so when I think about AI really helping in this space, I think about the knowledge worker and all the broad things they do. And if you think about that wide aspect of someone's job having all these different verticals, there's actually lots of different AI tooling available to help those, which in turn can make someone better at what they're doing. It just sort of depends on the task that they want to focus on.
Nice. Diana and Sam, I'm curious, you're also tech experts. What have you seen? Where are some use cases you maybe find value for resource managers?
Do you want me to go, Sam? I think when I think of how AI can help, it's never just AI for AI's sake, but what it can do is help make things go faster. It can help you avoid things or reduce things, and I'm being really general here. It can help recognize patterns and bring a particular view of the data sets that you've got. It can help predict and forecast things, as well as even reduce manual data entry. So there's this massive amount of options that we've got to play with here. And for me, coming from an operations side, I look at how it can improve the entire flow of a picture. And I see it coming into things like even just improving how you utilize timing of resources, who and what and where, things like enhancing the potential of that project to go well is one thing as well. So you're actually sticking to that plan. It's being more optimized, even just being more cost effective and reducing waste because there's less downtime. Or I look at things like balancing the work to be done versus the human aspect of that as well, like having employees' well-being taken into account, which is very difficult when you've got different drivers. So there's a lot of space in here, even if it's as simple as timesheeting. There are some companies doing voice to text at the moment, and so it might be that you just can blurt out your time on what project it was, and it suddenly documents it for you. So there's a lot of potential here, and I think it will help everything scale and flow smoothly in those areas. But I think it's to what James was saying, it's augmenting what we're already doing. So if you're looking at that journey and what you're already doing in resource management, you are actually the one to find where those gains might be made within that reduce something, make it go faster list that I mentioned. So heaps of potential. Sam, what about you?
Nice.
Yeah, I think one thing we've seen people do is the question of who's the best person for a project comes up a lot in resource management. And so being able to scour a large set of information, notes from timesheet entries, project reports, notes from maybe one-on-one talks or whatever, a large volume of unstructured information to say who actually has the relevant experience for this job. And what is the relevant experience given the brief of the job, because it might not be one-to-one mapping. So that's something that we've been exploring. More speculatively, I think one of the important things about a project is it going to be delayed or not? Is it going to overrun, and are you going to need to put people on it for longer than originally anticipated? And saying what kind of signals might we be able to identify that would indicate a project likely to overrun or not. And this could be everything from how many hours of overtime are people putting in to, what are the cadence of releases if it's a software project, to, what sort of chatter is going on in project documentation or project wikis and chat rooms and the like. You could potentially use all of those to establish signals of, do we have a project in trouble or not? Because inevitably people want to give the good news. I've seen it time and time again that people are uncomfortable to say, oh, I think this might delay. They're like, no, it's good, we can do that. And then right at the end, they're like, oh, we tried our hardest and it's still going to be delayed. And everyone wants to get that message early, but still we get to that situation. So yeah, that's more speculative, but I think a real potential for language model AI to help.
Very nice. And so you already kind of outlined 2 to 3 very important aspects of resource management, their scope of work, and where AI could fit. If we now look at the prerequisites, I'm really curious, what is your gut feeling? Are all these data points already accessible, in place, so that they can be used by AI? If not, what can resource managers do to prepare for that?
Who's going to have a stab at that one?
I can have a stab at
You
it.
go, James.
No,
you go, James.
Okay. I only think about this because Nora and I had a brief chat about it the other day. The getting the right data into a place where an AI or a machine learning model can be trained on, that is hard. Like, let's be honest, that's a difficult thing. And so what I think you find is over time, a lot of bespoke tools with AI capability built in will start to be brought out with they have direct access to that data that's been provided to them by the company or the software shop that's building it. And so getting the data into a system where the AI is actually built as an extension of the software, the developers of that have thought about it. And I think, let's say a resource management application, they wouldn't have to do much, but they would be constrained by whatever that capability is that's been built onto that software. Where things get really interesting is if you have access to some developers or some data analysts who can actually take data from many different sources and train a model on that. That's a lot harder because you have to have the capability to do that. So you have to, if you have a suite of products that you want to use the data out of to make a decision on, you have to get that into a central place. So you might have to work with some developers or your IT department or a software vendor to help with that. But if you can train a model or build an AI product that's just for your needs, like, you're going to have a very specific capability answering some very specific things just for you. But that's the spectrum. The spectrum's almost, actually, there's one end that's like ChatGPT. Fire some information, which is wonderful. Fire some information in it, see what happens. Then the middle is like, hey, AI is provided in the software that I'm using. And then down that far end is, I want to build something bespoke. But that bespoke area, there's a lot of work that goes into that, a lot of data ingestion, and actually getting the data in the right format, normalizing it across different sources you pull from, which I'm sure Sam could probably talk to. Like, that's a big job. So yeah, that's my angle.
So
I think
maybe
there's a lot of the how do I put that? Where we're at in the journey of AI right now is the foundational models are really solid, and they're very usable for people building applications on the top now. So just like us with Astronaut, and we're building something called Ask Astro to help bring some of those best-in-class data sources together without making it the user's problem. Hopefully, we can just be able to use those data sources, such as if you're using Jira or Run, and you can integrate with those and bring those data sources together in one view. And it should be a click of a button. That's our goal anyway, and we've already started establishing that. And many newer applications that are being built on top of these underlying models are beginning to segment themselves away from those LLMs that are being built behind the scenes, so that the data is stored not with the LLMs, not training those LLMs, and you can keep them nicely segregated from each other. So Sam can talk to the details on that, but we can now start to bring what we don't want is everyone creating another job for ourselves, creating more data, normalizing that data. That's the art of this now, is that we can think differently and just say, where is the source of this already? What already exists, and what can we learn from it? So that's our hope, is that quite quickly, and we're obviously in that camp now, we can bring those data sources together within moments, as easy as it is to giving Google permission to share. So Sam, what are your views on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely starts from the data. And I mean, the good thing about a lot of the data involved in this is that it's not big data. It's kind of gigabyte scale. You might have, you know, tens or hundreds of thousands of people in a very large organization, but that's still not going to be billions and billions of data points. It might be more like millions or hundreds of millions. And computers are actually pretty good at dealing with that level of data, as long as you use a database and not a spreadsheet. But it tends to be very heterogeneous, like comes from a lot of different systems, and it means different things on all those systems. So the challenge is not so much dealing with quantity as just dealing with so many different kinds. I think training models is one thing that can be done. I think the advent that we have now is that the language models like ChatGPT, they're very adaptable, and they provide a great first pass to say, can I see what you can do with those models? Having data scientists train a custom model will often lead to better results, especially in very numerically complex areas. But if you're dealing with a lot of words rather than numbers, the language models can be a pretty good go. And even with the numbers, it can be a good sort of place to start seeing if you get results, which kind of lowers the on-ramp. But I think thinking about it in terms of data first and AI second is really, you know, how you want to be planning these things out. What data do we want to act on, and how can we get that together? And then what do we want to do with that once we have it?
I see that as an opportunity for organizations like Run, who are specialists in a particular area like resource management, and the capability there that you can come at it from the problem space rather than how might we leverage AI. And I think always you will be able to find the things that work best if you are in that zone. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out. But I think you're in the right position for answering that question for your viewers, actually, as to how might AI help with resource management.
Yeah, I guess the tried and true thing that I've seen is the linking between CRM, job management, and resource management for the future. So you have the tentative work, the completed work, and the future work, and being able to get a consistent view of all that can be a really, really powerful basis for things and to apply AI models to.
Yeah. Listening to the three of you, I wonder if there is a very easy first step for resource managers, which could be something like becoming closer, building up a closer relationship to the IT department and the various different roles that might be in it, from data scientists, analysts, and software engineers. So maybe that's, you know, something easy to take away from the discussion. And the resource manager will not need to become an expert in all of these things, but there is a need to get, you know, closer to these experts and to form a partnership where, you know, we talk about what potential do we see, what is the next step for our context, our organization.
If you can find the data analysts or data scientists in your organization, and yeah, like you say, develop a close connection, that would be awesome. I think in a lot of
Nice.
organizations, the relationship of data analysts to the rest of the company is very transactional. But
Yeah.
having a broader connection where you can talk more about long-term goals and how to achieve not just a single request, but move the infrastructure in a more positive direction, you'll benefit from that a lot as a resource manager.
Nice. Yeah, coming back to your points, Sam, around the big picture, right? That's kind of the starting point. So if the resource manager and IT representatives can align on what's our bigger picture, ideally also aligned with the organizational strategy, that's where, you know, we can open up a door for a successful future to unfold.
I think also
Nice.
not being afraid of trying these things out. It's not as technically challenging as you might think now. There's a lot of work being done so that there are these applications you can have a try out. And I would highly recommend everyone play with them. Like, even if it's for something for their own self personally, for writing their blog post, or just getting used to these tools, because it actually is about a change of perspective, change of mindset. It's not about making faster horses again. It's about the mind shift that is like that automobile coming online. So trying to get yourself out of your normal day to day and thinking of something magical, even if it is creating magical images. And I recently put a photo of my 5 greats grandfather into a software tool and made him talk, which was very interesting to me. Not because I wanted to see that happen, but it was really just to test that and see how it worked. Equally, I put a document into the Google Notebook LM, which actually gave me a transcript of my notebook, and then created a podcast from it in 2 minutes. And it's a chatting back and forth with no, well, it is a little bit weird, but it is an entire podcast based on the 22-page paper I had. So try these things out. It's really fun. And then what it will do is expand your thinking about the potential of this. But I would say more ideas, great ideas, are coming out of people who are not data scientists and specialists in building AI models. It's coming up from the business and seeing the potential of how that might come and make things better for them. So.
Oh, I love that point so much, Diana. I think what you're talking to is really to start getting curious, right? And to maybe reevaluate our relationship to these new technologies like AI from a fear-based to a curiosity, growth, mindset-based approach, right? So what can we do with this? How might it help us? What does it actually do? And just start playing, building, creating. It's that innate ability that we all bring to this world that we sometimes forget in the business context. So yeah, I think that's a very uplifting kind of message that probably everyone can take away. I will certainly take some of your examples and have a go at how this could be, you know, further, prototypes and elaborated. I love that. And Sam and James, what is maybe something that you would like the audience to play with? What are some of the tools or areas you think resource managers could actually really benefit from already today?
I'll go first, Sam. I think that the notebook LLM example that Diana gave, that's actually wonderful. Like,
it was so surprising.
It is hilarious in a way where you can give it information and it will summarize for you and give you a podcast about it. Now, part of it sounds kind of silly, like a bit of a joke. Here's a podcast. But I think a better way to think about it is you've now got these tools that can summarize and give more condensed information back to in text form or in audio form. The video generators are a bit average, so let's not go there just yet. But that means that you can send information to these things and get it back in different formats, whichever you find easier to digest. So that's a wonderful example that the ChatGPTs and the Claudes and the Anthropic models, that there's all these are large language models that you can, it's just a text box and you just ask it, you just provide it some information and ask it some questions in a very general sense. And the reason I explain it like that is because there's no barrier to entry. So as people are going about their days and they're thinking various questions or various scenarios to themselves, even if the answers they want aren't available in the tool they're using, what information can they take from there and even copy and paste it with some supporting information into like a ChatGPT and getting something out. And the reason I think that approach is, as simple as it sounds, it's really quite powerful because you start to talk to these things in a way and you can realize the power behind them. And I think like that's one of the takeaways I want everyone to take out of this is that the tooling that's there at the moment is surprisingly powerful for so many different things. And the barrier to entry for it is just so low. So even if AI seems a bit scary, or maybe it's not built into the tools you're using day to day, you can still take part of that information and provide it to like a notebook LLM or a ChatGPT or whatever, and get something out of it, and then start riffing on it. And this is the way that it can augment what you do. Like that world of copying and pasting something to ChatGPT, that's not going to take away your job at all. But it might spark something in you. It might speed you up on your journey to whatever goal you're going towards. And so it's certainly helping you be more productive or helping you be better at what you do. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, I think one good way to think about a starting point is what's a better way of forming this information of more use to you. So you take something long and summarize it or convert its format. But equally, what's the format that the people you're communicating with want? So maybe you like writing, but other members of your team prefer to sit down for a meeting or have something audio because maybe they're dyslexic. But it's very easy for you to actually create something for them so that you can send something to them that they'll receive it more easily. I think digesting large quantities of information, there's a lot of tools out there that will just do that in one flow. And so if you are struggling to keep on top of all the information, looking for tools that can basically summarize the highlights and not just a generic summary, but potentially a summary focusing on specific areas that matter to you. That's a good thing. And I think there are tools out there. I think Claude is doing this, but I think a lot of the GPTs are where it can make you like a little interactive widget, like basically a sort of like a spreadsheet on the inside, but it's got a few sliders that you could look at, say, how would our project overrun affect our capacity for other projects or something like that. And so those are probably tools worth exploring rather than having to code those things up. Basically, the LLMs can code that for you and present it for you. So that's something that you can do, and that's something we're looking at playing with ourselves. Yeah.
Very cool. Nice. Thank you. So I definitely noted down Notebook, LLM for me to check out. Claude, I think that has not been really on my radar, so I'm going to check that one out. The interactive widget sounds really cool. And I would really like to double click on your point, James, around it's a starting point based on just kind of playing back and forth, interacting with any kind of AI tool. You can start to kind of gain a new perspective, and it can help just outline kind of an area you're thinking about and might spark some new ideas and elements you had not considered before. So I think this playful approach of exploration, let me just ask and see what comes back. It might be helpful, it might not be, but there might be something in there that I didn't see before that I can basically play with. So I think that's a very, very nice approach. Diana, you outlined kind of the experimentation, the having fun. Yeah, I think that for me, that's one of the key takeaways I'm hoping people take away, start partnering up with those tools and starting to, get curious. Looking at the practical side of things, I would just like to spend a few more maybe minutes on what can resource managers already use AI for to integrate into their workflows. And when we think about reporting, what are some of the use cases you can imagine?
We've been doing quite a lot of thinking about the reporting factor, mainly for what we are doing in Ask Astro, which is designed to do a lot of reporting at that top level, but it's really being fed from the data below. So we are concentrating on that leadership and board level. But the advantage of thinking about reporting makes you go, well, what actually matters? What needs to be reported and why? What is that data for? What is the user going to do with that? Is it just informational, or is there going to be an action? So what we find is a lot of reporting is making us feel like we're working hard. So we're reporting up and saying, look at all the great work we're doing, but it's not really for actioning or for making decisions on. So getting to the crux of what reporting needs to be. So for instance, is everything going well? Are there any signals or emerging risks or opportunities coming out of these things? And how do you present those to the right people at the right time? So equally, there are things like project reports. One of our customers has used our own tool for summarizing the journey of a product, of a project, I should say. They are in an engineering firm, so they have really long projects over like 3 or 4 years. They often have people coming in and being resourced into those projects, and they need a brief of what's happened and who are the experts. So he's been trying that out. And equally, at the end of a project, doing the project reporting and saying, here's the journey it went on. And it can really do well with that. So you can take those lessons learned into your new projects. You can do those things, even if it's as simple as taking in your meeting notes with your customers when you're doing those project reviews, and take all those things, and it can bring that all together and say, here's how that project actually went. And I remember doing many a retrospective at the end of a project and mapping that all out. And when it's been a long program of work, it's just very, very hard to do that to the detail that you really could get those nuggets out of it. So I see a really big opportunity there to bring forward that ongoing data, because that actually impacts your forecasting. How might it go in the future as well? What are the patterns? If this is the 5th project that's had the same pattern, what are we going to do about that? So that journey is a really interesting one to me, I think, in this space. So I'll stop talking. I keep talking.
Thank you. Yeah, great elaboration. Thank you. Sam, James,
Yeah.
are you wanting to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was gonna say that synthesizing incoming reports to produce a report for upstream is a really just good tactical way. You might come up with a prompt that covers the particular insights you want, and then paste all the individual reports you receive below it, and say, kind of give me a summary with these key points. And that will often do a surprisingly good job. And you don't really need any special tools beyond the LLMs, or maybe one of those. You can build a custom GPT on ChatGPT or something similar. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of those. The only other thing that I think there are something tactical here, but you have to get the data in a way, get some data out to feed it to something. But the idea of predictive analytics, like there's tools, say like a Google BigQuery, can take a huge amount of information, give it queries, and it can do predictive analytics on some outcome. So that is something that can be done today. The trouble is simply getting the data out of whatever system you use. Now, many of, say, resource management, many of these resource management tools have these APIs, which an API is just a way of getting the data out, and then you feed that data into something like a Google BigQuery. But that's not quite as approachable as taking some data you've already got and pasting it into a GPT, which is certainly probably the most easiest thing to do, I think, at the moment. Again, provided you've got the information to give it.
Yeah, without getting the
Sorry,
IT
Sam.
team involved, basically.
Yeah.
This is a quick reminder to our audience. Now would be the perfect time to submit questions based on the conversation we've had. You might think about your own environment, your own organization, how you might approach it. So feel free to use this opportunity with these three bright minds to ask any questions in this space you might benefit from having some ideas on.
While
Now that
they're
we've
doing
talked,
that, sorry, one use case that did come up was around business cases as well. We've seen quite a lot of our users putting business cases forward around things like putting a good case forward for hiring more staff, or different, should it be contractors versus full-time employees, those types of
nice.
concepts that you can really roll with.
Yeah.
And that's been really good at formulating a good case for something and the pros and cons of that. So don't be just thinking about resource management in its and it's doing the
Technical.
job. It's more like before in the pipeline and after, and for instance, even engagement for your people and culture people. How are people feeling on those projects? How are people experiencing their work as well? So there's lots of ways that you can actually see benefit around that flow. And yeah, I think there's probably a lot of gold to be found from, especially with people, I'm sure, who are listening to this, who are very experienced resource managers. You know where those areas are that are tightening up that little pipe. How might this come in and give it a bit of a boost through it at the top end as well? So something to consider.
Oh, I love it, Diana. And just on that, in terms of business case creation, do you have any recommendations on how a resource manager could actually use a tool to go about that? Like, what would be the prompt or the question you would ask?
That's a tricky one because we are trying to literally make that a non-issue in our own application, so in ours, but that's not what that's for. But I would say, if you were in ChatGPT, you can put the case forward without, I would highly recommend not giving it lots of personal detail and real detail, unless you very much click the box that says do not train on my data. But just giving the circumstances and rolling through, like, tell me what, as a resource manager of this size company trying to do this, this, and this, how might I be able to do that safely? What are my risks? What are my opportunities? And really work through it that way. And then once you've got that answer, say, okay, we'll roll that back through again and ask more detailed questions and keep iterating. I think one of the things that we forget is that we just put one question in and get one answer, whereas put one question in, take that response, put in another query, and just keep rolling through. So even just doing that in the public facing ones is really good at working through the logic, and so you can easily create that report rather than having the tool itself or a specific tool to do that.
I think the other thing I would probably add is make sure you put all the information that would be necessary for the GPT or what have you to come up with a good answer. So put all that context and say, here's some background information, and then give me a business case covering these points, because otherwise it's going to make stuff up.
Yeah.
And could not agree more. Often what I do is, if I want to do something, I'll actually start the prompt by saying, I want to create a business case. Please help me do so. What information do you need from me in order to be helping me with this task? And then it will provide a list. And then I'll say, ask me line by line. So I don't need to write this whole article, but it makes it more conversational. So I'll actually say, this is my goal. Help me do it. What do you need? Ask me line by line. I'll provide you the answers. This is very effective in my experience.
You're a prompt engineer,
very
Nora.
easy.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love it. The art of prompting. I would love to do one webinar just on that. Awesome. And you touched on something very important, Diana. You talked about make sure not to provide any sensitive information. So my next question to you is, what are the watch outs? What do we need to be careful of in the spirit of experimentation? That's all good and well, but where do we need to have our red flags up?
I'm not going to go first.
I've got one in
So,
mind.
I mean, well, you go.
Oh, yeah, cool. So these large language models in particular, actually really only the large language models, what makes them so good is they just make stuff up. Like it's their whole shtick is it's like a really amazing autocomplete. We ask it a question and it autocompletes an amazing answer. But so most of the time, I don't know if it's most of the time, a lot of the time, the stuff they make up is perfectly valid and it's very helpful and it answers your question exactly. But some of the time, it'll just make stuff up that doesn't exist. There's been cases of this in the media. There was a lawyer once who asked ChatGPT for some information about a legal case, and it just made up some legal cases, and he got called out because they didn't exist. So that's like my number one thing to watch out for is just double check what it's doing, making sure it's not making things up. And the last point on that is I've had this conversation with other software developer friends of mine, and we sort of came to this thought that the ones who are going to be able to take the most advantage of the AI tools are the people that have been coding for a while that can see what these AI tools generate. It can actually spot a bit of rubbish. And so I think that might be the case as well, where if you're coming at these and you're asking it questions and you don't actually have a lot of knowledge or expertise in the area that you're asking questions of, that's a thing to be wary of because you can't double check that it's actually correct. But if you're asking it questions to help prompt some creativity, to extend your thought on something you already know how to do, just to make you a bit better or extend what you're doing, then you can normally spot the mistakes, if any. You know, they are getting better and better all the time. So that's probably the number one thing that I watch out for because I sort of see it every day. Sorry, Sam, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, really just to reaffirm what Diana touched on, if you're using the free version of ChatGPT and you haven't gone into the settings to basically turn off the message history, your messages will be used to train future versions of the model. And if there's company data in there, that might be really bad. Probably asking your company to spring for a $20 a month license is probably the best way to solve that. One other thing was GPT generated text. It sounds like GPT, but it doesn't have to. Like you can come up with like a few sentences describing a style of language that you like, and then you can just have those few sentences and just like paste them in every time you get GPT to generate something. You know, have a bit of a play to kind of have it generate a voice that you like, and that'll stop you from sounding like everyone else or sounding, you know, sounding like GPT.
When it says in conclusion or in the days of, you know, it always has the beginning statements.
Yeah.
I like to think of it at the moment a little bit like having a really clever, well-trained dog that really wants to make you happy. So you can teach it something and it really wants to respond in a good way and get the pat. And it's exactly like that. It will actually give you everything you want. But just like a dog, even if it is a well-trained dog, if you're feeding it treats and then it sees your dinner on the table, it has to really understand that that's not its food as well. And so my point being, if you put data into it, it often doesn't know that it shouldn't consume that data and have that data in part of its knowledge base because it just really wants that data. It really wants that knowledge. It wants to expand itself. So if we think about it like that, it's like think about what you're putting in and be conscious of it but not afraid of it. Conscious of saying, yeah, would I want this? Would I want my dog to be trained on this? That's a bad metaphor. So that's the type of thing we can think about right now. Whereas when you're using applications that are being built now and probably in the next 2 years or so, things will be quite different, I would imagine. Things will be hopefully a lot more easy for general users who are not coders to be able to really manage that at a really succinct level. Things will be way more transparent, hopefully, and traceable. And even now, like with our own, we are putting links in those things so we can see where that data is coming from, see where that result is coming from. So it's not just a hallucination of AI. So Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for that beautiful metaphor of the dog being trained. I love that. And we actually have the first question coming in, so I would love to pick up on that. Thank you, Sonia, for sharing it. Which AI tools are you using mostly in your app, and how do you handle sensitive data?
Who wants to start?
Diana, can I pick you first, because we were
Oh, yeah.
talking about this?
I use quite a few in my day-to-day life tools to help me, as well as my own. One of the reasons about handling sensitive data is I personally wanted to create a space where you could actually put your company data and your organizational data in without it being absorbed by the LLM. So that's important to us. But what I use, things like Contented AI or Fathom, which are about meeting notes and being able to transcribe things and then create to-do lists or action items or risk lists out of those. Contented AI is a really great one for that. I also do one that is for creating marketing materials, and it can take your ICP and turn it into a whole marketing spiel, and then it can create the ad assets from it as well. So I can't remember what that one's called. Ad creative is what it's called. I use that one. I also use Teller, which is a local one here, which is a video, a bit like Loom. You can film inside a content video screen, but it's just really, really usable. So I've enjoyed using that one. Canva is what I use a lot, which has got a lot of AI in it now, which has been actually really great, from converting your one document into another type of document. So that's been really fun. So that's just something I'm using constantly every day.
Nice.
One that I've been
Awesome. Thank you.
using is, one that I've been using is Chatbox. So it's a piece of software you download, and then you can put API keys from places like Claude and OpenAI into it. And the thing about the privacy is that all of the APIs, they're a lot stricter about not using the content that goes to APIs for training data. And so that's just how I avoid having to do that. It can also be cheaper because you pay by use. So if you just use it a bit, you might only pay a few dollars or a few cents in a month. And yeah, so Chatbox is the one that I use, but there's lots of tools that kind of work in a similar way.
Yeah, I use a very similar one called Typing Mind, which a few other people at Run use, and it's just like a Chatbox UI where you can enter in your credentials for OpenAI or your API keys for Claude or Anthropic or Google Gemini, and then point to your discussion at the various ones. So I find I use the Anthropic Claude model the most these days, and mostly I also have that actually built into my code editor. So as I'm coding, it can take the context of what I'm doing and provide suggestions. It doesn't write all code that I want for me. Unfortunately, it's not that good. But if I have to do a bunch of grunt work and type out a bunch of things, at least in my code editor for me, it can autocomplete a lot of grunt work and save me a lot of time. And then sometimes I'll just paste my code with the information I want into the chat box itself and say, can you fix this? Something's broken here. And they're so good. Like, I think sometimes I just get lazy. I'm like, oh, I could figure this out, but I can't be bothered. Could I just ask you? And it's like, yeah, here's your problem. Cool. Save me some time. And then also we actually just use them in conversation. I had a chat with someone the other day and we were trying to decide what's a pond and what's a lake. At what point does a pond become a lake? And we couldn't figure that out. So we asked ChatGPT. Turns out there's no actual strict definition. Also not a strict definition between a stream and a river. But we wouldn't have known otherwise. And so that's kind of fun as well.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you for sharing your top go-to AI tools. I've noted them all down. I'll check them out for sure. And thank you, Sonia, for sharing your question. To wrap us up, I would love to look at the resource management skills. So if we look at a resource manager wanting to prepare for this unfolding future? What new skills do you need to develop to effectively work with AI? What are some of your recommendations?
From my own experience in it, I think most resource managers are a particular type who would be really good at this. So they've probably got a lot of these curiosities and wanting to optimize what is happening for people and the types of resourcing they're doing. And so be confident in the fact that you're probably got everything you need to get involved with this as a topic, because you are the ones who are looking for ways to make things flow, make things better, and deliver the results. Like, that's what I always think. But if I was saying one thing more about what you might want to bring into that, I think even there are some really interesting just introductions to AI courses, very short ones or seminars you can attend. I just go to a few of those because it'll give you the base understanding of the difference between these things that we're talking about, like the LLMs versus applications, things being built on AI versus RAI versus machine learning, all of those. It just gives you this foundational knowledge, and you'll feel a lot more confident about what some of the lingo that is happening will be. So there are quite a few free ones, quite a few online ones, and you can just, or even just doing a few YouTube ones would be fine. But I think just get a little bit more of an understanding of the concepts behind this, because it has significantly changed in the last 2 years. So
Nice.
James, what about you?
Cool. I'll just sort of extend that, where, like, if you talk about how like going and finding some resource to learn about them is wonderful to do, to have a base understanding of how they work. And the thing that I sort of take a different lens on there is figuring out what it can't do yet. When you if you go to, again, say ChatGPT, and you arrive there and it's just a text box, there's no visual affordances that tells you what it can and cannot do. And so the only way you're going to learn what it can and cannot do is by going out and learning it by yourself, or just by experimentation. And the more of that you do over various areas of your work, you'll be able to approach, like, you'll come up with a question and you think, can AI help me with this, or can AI not help me with this? And knowing the answer to that, can continue down different paths. And when we think about AI augmenting us in our role, we really want to know that line. Like, what's the line of where AI can help us, and what's that line where it can't? And so I think playing around and finding that line, because then you know what you can lean on. Then you know what tools, what parts of AI you can use to help make you better at your job.
I think
How about you,
James
Sam?
can't and shouldn't possibly. Like, that's the other
Yes.
angle of that. There's a lot of areas where people are forcing AI in, and they really shouldn't be solving that problem with AI. So that's the other extension of that one. So Sam, to you.
Nothing in particular from me. Sorry. Missed that one.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. So thank you for that wrap-up question, and thank you so much, all three of you, for generously sharing your curiosity, your expertise, and your perspectives on this very exciting and new topic. And I would love to re-invite the three of you in a year from now and just see where the state of the art is. Until then,
Yeah,
what
sounds
has
good.
evolved, what has unfolded, and where the future is headed. So thanks, all three of you, so much for your time. In October, our LEAP webinar will dive into the topic of forecasting and best practices for resource management. We would love to see you there. So thank you so much all for joining us. It's been a very exciting session, lots of notes. We would love to hear from you, maybe on social media, what you're taking away. Wishing you a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you are in the world, and hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye.